Alright, I hope we're back together again here. We got disconnected just now. Let's try again. If you can say something, please. If you can get this live stream. Okay. Hi once again. We have about 15 minutes left. After that, I want you to go to the Google form and do the 3, 2, 1 exercise. Okay? Right. So we're now at page 70. Okay, obviously, the last time I talked about how the census officers were actually very cruel, right? Because they forced, okay, Benjamin, they forced Benjamin to walk, right? He's a 12-year-old boy. They forced him to walk up a mountain, right? Okay, so we move on now. The road was covered with small round ironstones with sharp ones in between. How long still was it to Saturday? 2 nights. Okay, so it was difficult for him to walk because the road was difficult. It was very painful for him to walk. Okay. Look at page 71. Okay, here his feet started to burn like fire inside the shoes. The shoes no longer fitted him, they had shrunk or something, and then he could no longer keep back the tears, right? So at this point, he was so devastated. Okay, let's highlight this. Yeah. And then he could no longer keep back the tears, right? So at this point, he is so devastated. That he can't help but to cry, right? Every time one of the men on the car looked round, he hung his head so they would not see him. He was crying. He did not want to cry, but he could not help it. He couldn't help it, right? He did not want to, but he couldn't help it. He started falling behind because his feet were burning. So, at this point, I guess, you know, if you're thinking of from my point of view, from a teacher's point of view, or from maybe an exam setter's point of view, right? This situation would definitely be good to ask a question like, you know, how does now? Okay, maybe I should write in a different pen color. Okay, so let's try a different pen color, blue, right? So maybe this is a potential question, right? Question: how does Matthew, okay, make you sympathize with Benjamin? Right, so this can also be used for a moments question. For example, if you get a passage-based question very similar to this, and then they ask you for another moment from the novel, right? So again, this is it's a moments friendly passage, right? If they ask you in what other using one other moment in the text, show how Matthew make you sympathize with Benjamin, for example, right? So this is Benjamin / Lucas. So this is important. Chapter 7, page 71. Right? Chapter 7, page 71. Ooh, what did I do? 71. Okay. right? You can see it's a very difficult time for him. He started falling behind because his feet were burning, and he was sure they were bleeding. Goodness, right? Um, when the census officers noticed that he was falling behind, right? They said, "Don't get too far behind, Sonny," as if it's so easy. "Go to hell," he shouted back in his heart, right? So he was so, I guess he was so unhappy that it made him angry, right? It made him angry. Oops. Yeah, this one. When the tall one stopped the horses to let them blow again, he sat down and took off the shoes. Fortunately, his feet were not bleeding yet. They were very red. Okay, his mother had told him to keep the shoes on so that people could see communities were decent people. Again, this comes back to the idea that Fiela is very concerned about the way people perceive, her upbringing, her family members, right? She's a very proud woman, and it's quite obvious that Benjamin is also quite proud. How do we know he's proud? Remember when he was crying, he didn't want them to see him crying, right? But he just couldn't help, so he hung his head down so that they couldn't see his crying, right? And that brings me to this part, which says, "Seems to me you've been crying," right? And he says, "I haven't." So he lied. He lied because he didn't want to show them weakness, right? "How far is it still, Master?" "To where?" "To nice now. We're not even halfway yet, lad." "What time is it then, Master?" 12 o'clock, right? Okay. When he fell in behind the cart again, the tears came in torrents. So again, he was crying and crying. Why? Because he just couldn't help it, right? He had to wipe his face on David's coat to see where he was going. He was weeping so badly that the tears were impeding his sight, right? That's how bad it was. So I guess, again, at this point, we must say, if we are talking about a moment's or why we sympathize with him, right? That he is in such a pitiful state, maybe, right? That he's going through a very difficult period and he's suffering. Okay, so when you are answering a question of why you sympathize, you make sure you explain, right? If you say, "I sympathize," okay, let me explain this. "I sympathize with," but after you give the evidence, you have to explain why, right? The evidence cannot self-explain your point. You have to explain. Okay, you give the evidence, and then you have to explain why. And normally, when you talk about sympathy, you talk about the character being in having suffering or being in a difficult situation, right? That he's, he is that his pain is unbearable, maybe. Right? Okay. So there's some time has passed. He climbed up on the sides of his feet. When they told him to get on again, okay, luckily for him, they told him to get on. "I thought those shoes would pinch you," the tall one said, laughing. Right, and I think, at the same time, it's also very easy for this chapter to kind of like make the reader feel a lot of animosity for the census officers, for the way they treat him, right? The reader must be quite put off, right, by the census officers' behavior and how they ill-treat this boy, how they scorn him and how they mock him. Okay. Alright, this, I don't know why I highlighted this. Let's look at this. And I don't know how they are going to get you white again. Again, I think this is the part, if you refer to the second page of chapter 7, back, and then again here you see, okay, there's more evidence to show what? This evidence to show conspiracy. Oops, what did I do? Show, where's the button? Evidence to show conspiracy. Okay, that these census officers lied. They never intended to to bring him back. Okay, he did not like the tall one at all. The short one's not so bad. And his mother had said, "Good God help both of them if they ever put a foot on World Crowd again after Saturday." Right, what page is this? 73. So we're gonna halfway through, and our time is running out in about 5 minutes. So we're gonna get through this next page quickly, and then after that, I want you to do the Google form. Okay. Right, the sun was down in the sky by the time the road turned into a green tunnel of trees and bushes. Is this the forest? His backside was sore from sitting. It's the beginning of the forest, the short one said, sounding worried. Everything. Oh, why was he worried? Again, you know, Darlene Matthew has a very clever way, right? She's very clever in creating suspense. Okay, here we have sounding worried. Okay, obviously it's FS, which is foreshadowing. Yes, everything was suddenly different. The air smelled like the mud. Okay, and so on and so forth. It was beautiful to Benjamin. Other people living here, master, mostly woodcutters. So we get to kind of like an introduction into the habitat of the woodcutters. And then we get to the proof of why they are scared. Why? Who's scared? The short one, is it? Yeah. Why the short one starting to get fearful. Fear of elephants, or in other words, they are called big feet. Right? There's here somewhere. Okay? Everything sounded softer. The horses hooves, the cart's wheels. There was no dust any longer. Right? So we're gonna stop here for this lesson. I hope you've learned something. Right, if you look at the Google form, let me just see whether I can get access to it. Google form that I created for you. Home-based learning, yes. Okay, never mind. I'll just go to my Google form. My drive, yes, my drive. Okay. Wrong account. Okay, Fiela's child reflection. Alright. Maybe I can share this with you. Window capture. Chrome, where's Chrome? Okay, never mind. I can't get it. I don't know whether we can use the camera to show you. So this is what I'm talking about. Right? Look at the screen there. Okay, this is what you have to do. Right? Oh, excuse me, this is spelled wrongly. Let me change this. Fiela's child. Okay. So, put your name, index number, and choose your class. And I want to talk about 3 new things that you've learned. Can you talk about 3 new things that you've learned? Okay. Make it bigger for you. Okay, 3 new things that you've learned. Right. 2 things you want to know more about, and lastly, what theme or issue is raised in this chapter. Right. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining us on this home-based learning live stream lesson. See you in school tomorrow. Bye.